Meeting will come to order. Thank you very much. We'll get started momentarily. I know we've still got a few folks in line, and I'll stall for time until they can find a seat. I did want to point out that the front, the section to my right, in front of the screen, ideally that's reserved for seniors and those with a hearing impairment, because we have the CART translation. So if you are seated in that section and you don't need that service particularly, we still have some seats in these sections and in the bleachers. If you wouldn't mind moving, you'd be helping out some folks that do need that service. Thank you. All right, we'll begin with the return of service of the warrant. We actually have two special town meetings tonight, and I'll explain the procedure that we'll use for those, but we'll start with special town meeting number 1, as we're calling it. And I find that the warrant for this special town meeting has been properly executed and has been properly served, and return of service made by Constable Matthew J. King. We are in session. All right, it is our custom to begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll call upon the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Melissa Hebert, to lead us in the pledge. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, as you checked in, I hope everyone got a copy of the town meeting report or brought the one that was mailed to you at home. You'll need that to follow the motions for tonight's meeting. Also, there's a yellow update sheet that was on the check-in table with a revised motion for Article 12, and you'll need both the yellow sheet and the newsprint booklet to follow along with things. Given the attendance tonight, we've set up an overflow room that we're going to encourage non-voters to utilize so that we can get voters here in the hall. There is a TV, there's video and sound in the cafeteria for those that end up down there, and we're trying to accommodate as many voters as we can. We're in session for special town meeting number 1. As close to 7:30 as possible, we're going to adjourn this special town meeting and begin special town meeting number 2, which consists of a single article, and we hope that we'll handle that one in a quick fashion, and we'll come back to the main special town meeting, which contains 17 articles and which contains the votes on the fire station and Alumni Field and so forth. And I hope that everyone got the news that we're going to conduct the voting for both the fire station and Alumni Field using the ballot and checklist procedure. They're both borrowing articles that require 2/3 majority, and given the discussion in the papers and elsewhere, I don't have any confidence that we could achieve unanimity on either one. So we're going to go right to the ballot and checklist when the time comes. So we'll get started with special town meeting number 1, and I hope we get through a few articles before we have to start the second meeting. But we'll begin with Article 1, which is bills of prior years. And it's been moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen that the town vote to transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $1,439.35 to pay the following unpaid bills from prior fiscal years, and you'll see the two bills totaling the $1439.35. And you'll note that the Selectmen and the Finance Committee both support Article 1, which requires a 9/10 majority. I'll recognize Selectman Carr to speak to Article 1.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So these are just two bills left over for KJ Plumbing and Heating and Littleton Electric, totaling $1439.35. It's a cleanup article for the previous fiscal year.
All right. Is there anyone who wishes to speak with respect to Article 1? As I mentioned, it requires a 9/10 majority by state statute, and we've been quite successful in getting a unanimous vote on articles such as this in the past, which saves us having to count who's in favor and who's against. So all those in favor of the motion as read, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. It passes by a unanimous vote, and I so declare. Thank you very much. We'll move on to Article 2. Changes to the compensation and classification plan with respect to the state minimum wage. And it's been moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen that the town vote to approve Article 2 as printed in the warrant. And I'll again recognize Selectman Carr to further explain.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So we have a classification table for camp counselors and program aides, lifeguards, junior sailor instructors, all for Park and Rec. This article, if approved, will bring the hourly rate up to the state's minimum wage.
All right. Is there anyone who wishes to speak with regard to Article 2? Changes in the compensation and classification plan due to the change in the state minimum wage. If not, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as read, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. I declare it to be a unanimous vote, and Article 2 is passed. And Madam Clerk, please so record. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to Article 3, which are FY 2017 budget adjustments. FY 17 is the current fiscal year that the town finds itself in. And it's been moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $106,189 to amend the FY 2017 operating budget as adopted pursuant to Article 4 of the May 2, 2016 annual town meeting by adjusting budget line items as follows. And you'll see the three budget line items that are being increased, and the total is $106,189. I'll recognize the Selectman Carr once again to explain these adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So we have three adjustments for the FY17 budget. One is to add the $52,362 to the school budget from a net increase from school aid. A $45,410 increase is to implement the reorganization of the finance and administration in Town Hall. Basically, having a assistant town administrator and breaking those duties from Bonnie as the assistant town administrator of budgets. And another $8,417 for Park and Rec Enterprise Fund, general fund subsidiary to implement the minimum wage adjustment in Article 2.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak with respect to Article 3? Budget adjustments for fiscal 2017. If not, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as read, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? The ayes have it. It passes by the necessary majority. In fact, it was a unanimous vote. And Madam Clerk, please so record. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to Article 4, Debt Exclusion Stabilization Fund, and I'll recognize the Chairman of the Selectmen, Melissa Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Debt Exclusion Stabilization Fund is something we established at our last town meeting in May. It has the purpose of depositing money into it so that we can use that to defray any of the costs on principal and interest from borrowing on capital projects. So in essence, we're looking to put $532,801 into the Debt Stabilization Fund, and that would have a positive impact on the amount of taxes that we pay.
All right, thank you. All right, it occurs to me I may not have read the motion. Let me do that for you. Moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $440,316 and transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $92,485 for a total of $532,801 to be deposited in the Debt Exclusion Stabilization Fund. And you'll note that the Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen both support Article 4. Is there anyone who wishes to speak with respect to Article 4? Yes, sir. Please come to one of the two microphones we have this evening.
Jared Opioid, New Estate Road. So this 440 is really out of our tax pockets right now, correct? In other words, if this didn't go into the
Okay.
fund, it could be used to lower the tax rate?
All right, Jerry, we got an answer for you. I'll recognize the Assistant Town Administrator for the moment.
Thank you. Bonnie Holston, Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget. This is money that was budgeted for snow and ice removal for last fiscal year that was not spent. In the previous year, we spent all of the money that we had budgeted and plus some. But last year was much more forgiving. So this money remains available for appropriation, and the proposal would put it into the Debt Exclusion Stabilization Fund, which would then be applied towards the excluded debt that is raised outside of 2.5 to help manage the tax bills.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions with respect to Article 4? If not, we'll proceed to a vote. Requires a simple majority. All those in favor of the motion as read, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. It passes by the necessary majority vote. In fact, it was a unanimous vote by my ears. Madam Clerk, please so record. If anyone has a seat or two that's empty next to them, if you could maybe just raise your hands. We're hearing that people are having trouble spotting empty seats. So if people in back can kind of move to where those empty seats are, that'd be great. All right, we'll proceed now to Article 5. Which is in supplemental FY17 capital items from available funds. And there are three sections to this, A, B, and C. And I'll read the motion, but it would be my intention that we discuss and vote each of them separately, because there may be some folks that like A and B or C, or not all three, none of the above. So we'll give people a chance to vote on those individually. Moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen that the town vote to transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $320,000 for capital and one-time projects itemized and described in Article 5 as follows. $48,000 for item A, $20,000 for item B, and $252,000 for item C. So we'll start with item A, which is a comprehensive needs assessment for recreation fields. I'll recognize Selectman DeCoste to explain. Item A.
Item A is $48,000 that's proposed for a comprehensive needs assessment for recreational fields. And what this is an opportunity for Park and Rec, Board of Selectmen, the Highway Department, to contract with a consultant. We've gotten some information from a number of contractors, and we've gotten anywhere from an $80,000 request for proposal to a $30,000 request for proposal to fund this assessment.
Okay, thank you, Selectman DeCoste.
I would like to raise a point of order, sir.
Okay, I think I know what's coming. Yes, go ahead.
There's no one in the overflow room counting votes or attending to the voice vote. And so we need to resolve that.
Okay, the town clerk informs me that we're making an effort to get more chairs into the gymnasium for voters. The overflow area is intended for non-voters, so there shouldn't be anybody voting down there.
Sir, the fire marshal has directed people to go to the overflow area.
The fire marshal?
The
I think I see the fire chief. I'll
chief.
defer to him. You've been promoted,
Bonus.
chief.
Unfortunately, there are a few scattered seats within this space. We have met capacity. Overflow is going to the cafeteria. We will need somebody up there to count.
Okay, the town clerk tells me that there are 50 more chairs in the building that are going to be moved into the gym. You telling me that can't happen or shouldn't happen?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. All right, I'm going to declare a 10-minute recess, and please keep your seats, and we'll figure out this situation with the overflow area. So please stay tuned. Anyone who isn't a voter to please stand up and go to the overflow area. We'd like to fit as many voters in here as possible, and we know there are some non-voters out there, and just discreetly get up and make your way to the overflow area. That would be appreciated. Thank you. I'm going to recognize the Chair of the Board of Selectmen, Melissa Hebert, to make a procedural motion.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Paul Avella as the Deputy Town Administrator in the overflow section.
Second?
Deputy Town Monitor.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nay. Paul Avella has been elected unanimously as Deputy Moderator. Now, Mr. Avella is going to count the votes in the overflow room for us. It'll be a little unwieldy. I think things will sort themselves out as we go through, particularly after the big votes take place. I think we're going to have plenty of good seats later on tonight. But so Mr. Avella is making his way down to the cafeteria. And again, if there are any non-voters here, we'd appreciate you moving to the overflow area, where they'll be counting the votes of registered voters in that area. Hopefully, we can fit them all back here into the gym at some point tonight. I'm going to give him just a few minutes to get down there, so please bear with me. Thank you. All right, we're going to move forward now. And we're actually going to stop right in the middle of Article 5, if you will, or Part A, for the discussion. Well, actually, we've got about 2 minutes until 7:30. Let me see if we can get Part A done. Selectman DeCoste just explained the comprehensive needs assessment for the recreation fields. Is there anyone who wishes to speak with respect to the $48,000 that would be appropriated for that purpose specifically? Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself.
Jane Crisfield, Mill Lane. What is an overlay surplus, and how much is in it, and where does it exist financially? I see it popping up a few times in this town meeting, and I don't understand what it is.
Okay. Very good question. Bonnie?
Overlay surplus is a reserve that is used to account for abatements and exemptions and taxes. So anytime we send out the tax bills, we need to set a reserve aside for people that apply for abatements. And those abatements get paid out of overlay. That's what the reserve is called. So once a fiscal year is closed out and we have all of our cases settled with the appellate tax board, if there's a balance remaining in that, it can be released for appropriation. So as a matter of financial policy, we ask the Board of Assessors annually if there is any overlay to release. We had a lot of large cases settle in the last year, so there was a larger amount to release this year.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir?
Mark Rambacher, 205 Hartwell. I had a question what the needs assessment for recreational fields means. Does that mean we are looking at what fields the town needs, or are we looking at what the fields need?
Okay.
Ivan Pagasic, Park and Rec Commission. We are looking at what the fields need, and we're going to come up with a maintenance plan and cost for our athletic fields or recreational fields.
So this study doesn't go through and say we need more fields in town or anything like that?
It's going to look at usage, and if the study comes out and says we need more based on usage, then we'll look at that as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? If not, we'll proceed to a vote on Part A only at this point in time. So with respect to the motion and a Part A, which is the sum of $48,000 for item A. All those in favor of the motion as read, inclusive only of item A at this point, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? Okay, that's clearly a majority vote in this room, and we'll have to wait for the runner to come down from the cafeteria to tell us how the vote went in the cafeteria. And while we're waiting, in great suspense for that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this special town meeting for the purpose of opening special town meeting number 2, and that we will finish the business of special town meeting number 2 before we reconvene special town meeting number 1. Confused yet? I don't know if... All right, so moved. Second. All right, all in favor of adjourning special town meeting number 1, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Clearly a majority. So the motion for special town meeting number 2 is on the last page of your booklet. Well, it's on page 22. And there'll be a short presentation, but I'll put the motion on the floor for you, and in the meantime, the vote will come down from the cafeteria, and we'll tell you what that was for item 5. I think we've got our runner here. Well, why don't we get that? Okay. All right, so we can, the vote in the cafeteria was unanimous. It was nearly so here. So item 5A passes by the necessary majority vote. Thank you very much. When we return to special town meeting number 1, we'll take up item B. But now we're handling Article 1 in special town meeting number 2, which is a tax increment financing agreement, so proposed by the Board of Selectmen, and it's been moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen that the town vote to approve Article 1 as printed in the warrant. I recognize the Board of Selectmen for the presentation. I understand we have some guests here that represent the company involved in here, so with the unanimous consent of town meeting, we'll allow them to speak on this article as well. But Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Very fine, Sunny Delight. These are businesses our town has known and loved for a long time. Important building in our town has been vacant for quite a while. Those businesses have left and the building has been vacant. It's been a top priority for the selectmen to fill that building with a company, ideally a bottler, one that we could respect and work with, that would be a community citizen, and that we had mutual interests in. And we've been working on that for quite some time with the current owner, with the previous owner, and working to find kind of the right fit. We think we found it, and we're happy to introduce them here tonight. I'll let them introduce themselves and a little bit about their company. But this article involves a TIF. And let me tell you a little bit about what this company is doing. They're investing $22 million in that plant. They're creating 50 new jobs. The TIF, which is a tax increment financing, gives them some relief on their taxes for a certain period of time. This TIF is a 7-year TIF, will alleviate them of $113,000 in taxes over that 7 years with a gradual decrease, but that's the total. But by having them in town, we gain $1.4 million over that same amount of time. Not only that, but the building's vacant right now. By filling it, we'll automatically have $8 million rolling off residential and into the commercial tax. So a little bit more here. It's important, the Board of Selectmen support this. Supporting the TIF will allow them to apply for more grants from the state for them to be successful in their business. They've also signed a host community agreement with us. At the end of 5 years, they would actually give back $20,000 for something important in the community. At that point, there'll be, I think, zero profitability, and you're already giving back, and I know intend to be a good community player having you here. So I'm pleased to welcome Don Smallwood and Dan Gray of Patriots Bottling. Sorry, if you guys would like to say a little bit, that'd be great.
Thank you, Melissa. Trusting that you're not here to see us, I'll try to be very, very brief.
If you could introduce yourself, sir, that'd be...
Yeah, I'm Don Smallwood. I am the general manager at Epic Enterprises, which is up 2A on just before you get to the traffic circle in Air. Dan Gray is the general manager at CPF. We are two brother-sister Pepsi plants. Between the two of us, we do over 50 million cases of Pepsi, Lipton tea, Aquafina, various and sundry energy drinks, and lots of seltzer, including Schweppes. So our two plants have pretty well outgrown our area, and the company, PepsiCo, is changing quite a bit, doing a lot of new things, a lot of water, a lot of seltzer, a lot of tea and other containers that the Very Fine plant is capable of doing with some modification. I actually moved here in 1987 to the area in 1987 and went to work for Very Fine as vice president of operations there. And Dan was there at the time and stayed after I left to go to Epic in Air, and was the general manager at both Sunny Delight and Kraft. So we're both very, very familiar with the area. We know a lot of the folks here in Littleton, particularly Brad Miller right next door. And we're here to ask for your support. And in this article, we do plan to begin almost at once and hope to be bottling in that plant something by perhaps as early as late spring. I'm not sure what all we'll be making there yet, but some of the things would be bottled water, Gatorade, and a number of other things that you see up here on the board that we are already making over in Air, and some that we don't make in Air that we would like to make here in Littleton. So we'll entertain any questions you might have. So fire away if there are any.
All right, if anyone wishes to speak to the article or has questions, please come to one of the microphones. Yes, sir.
Hi, Harvey Atkins, Newtown Road, longtime citizen of Littleton. Will you be using a larger quantity of water from Littleton than Very Fine and Sunny D?
I would say it's going to be relatively equal to what was. It will be reduced at the beginning because it's going to be a startup. But as it gears up, it should be about the same as what was being used at Very Fine.
Now, are you affected, would it be affected by the drought that we've been having for the last year or so? I mean, we've been on low water for over a year or so because of the drought, and now that's without having any company taking water from the wells. Is there any, security that we won't overdraw because of the drought situation?
Is that a question for the water department, Harvey? I mean, more so than the gentleman?
Yeah, I guess I would
Okay.
ask the water department for their input.
There's a water commissioner, or I think the general manager is here. could respond to that question, that would be... So, all right.
I did see him earlier while we're waiting. We did have Scott Edwards, the manager of Littleton Electric and Water Department, at the table with us when we were talking with them, and they felt confident this is something they can support. They're welcome to speak for themselves, though.
Just concerned about the consumption that we've used without, in the middle of a drought, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, we understand that the general manager, Scott Edwards, is on his way back into the hall, so we'll get an answer to your question in short order. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Steve Glines from Foster Street. I'd like to know why the selectmen think that giving a tax break to a company coming into town is not the same as subsidizing the sale price of the property. It would seem to me that if the purchasers would like to reduce the price of their purchase, they should go to the seller, not come to the taxpayers. I'd like to hear some talk about that.
Okay, thank you. Board of Selectmen?
Well, I can say that the TIF allows the business to apply for more grants from the state. Without gaining that, they can't ask for more money in particular, so it's a requirement of the government grants. And I see Mr. Edwards, if you want to go back to the first question.
Thank you. I recognize Scott Edwards, General Manager of our Littleton Electric Light and Water Departments.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the question was water supply. I did have some conversations, excuse me, with Dan Gray concerning that. He gave us an estimate of what they would be using for water. At this time, it looks like at least in the first few years, we can handle the water draw. As time moves on and development continues in Littleton, I think years 3 to 5, it's going to get tighter, but we're aggressively looking at new wells. We're looking at increasing output from some of our wells. So, at this time, I think the water department is in good shape for that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Ben Wilson, 22 Sanderson Road, which happens to be right behind the plant. And as such, I'm curious what the plan is for impact on the community, particularly physical impact, noise, trucks on the road conditions, things like that.
All right, thank you.
It'll be very similar to Sunny Delight and Craft over the last 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, Amy Charlo Lewis at Through Omega Way, and I was wondering if your corporation has a history of philanthropic giving back to the community, if you give to nonprofits or community groups or...
Yes, we do. Both from the time that both Dan and I were at Verifine, and currently Epic Enterprises is a supporter of Indian Hill Music, for example. We really like to focus on food banks, where we're in the food business and we like to focus on food banks. But for example, the town of Air comes to us every year looking for donations for Christmas lights, and so for several years we've given them $1,000 a year for Christmas lights for the traffic circle in Air, and that sort of thing. And there's many, many more in addition to doing business. I mean, we already do business with folks like Hunter Appliance and the gasoline stations, and we bring a lot of people in that visit both suppliers and also Pepsi corporate people, Marriott Courtyard down the street, brand new restaurants, that sort of thing. All benefits from our being here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I'd like to know what is the current amount of taxes that's been paid on that empty property first.
Do we have that?
I don't have the exact amount that they're paying in taxes currently, but I can tell you that as a vacant parcel, when it was occupied, it was valued at $12 million, and because it's vacant now, it's down to $4 million. By applying the in-use code back, it brings the value back up to that $12 million, which pulls the tax from the residential class to the commercial. So we can only, raise so many taxes per year, but because that value goes up by $8 million, it provides relief to the residential class.
Well, my concern here is that with the TIF, that's a way of doing business in this state. And it's an opportunity for towns. If you note, they say they're going to get 1.4 million during the same period, that they're going to give them a break for 123,000, I think it was, or something along that line. That's a big difference. I mean, I'll trade that kind of money with anybody for that. And I think that it's a good opportunity for us to understand also that they're dumping in $22.7 million into that property. That's a lot of money they're putting in there to come here to do business. And I think that the selectmen's, they need to play ball with these businesses that are coming here. This is something that they've been looking at trying to get someone. I think that the selectmen is sparing you the efforts that they put in to try to get somebody to come in here and take that building. And they happen to come along, and I'm thankful, and I welcome you very much, open hands. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Assistant Town Administrator.
Mr. Sanders, I do have the tax bill information for you. The current tax bill is $126,373. With the TIF included, the revised tax bill will be $331,098.
Okay, thank you. All right. Yes, ma'am, I saw you. Oh, okay, you've been there longer? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, Margaret Russell from Berry Bush Road. I'm concerned about what kind of waste products will be created by your manufacturing process and by your business, and what is your waste management plan?
Okay, thank you.
Most of the products we produce are food items and biodegradable, and the wastewater treatment facility there is still considered state-of-the-art, and the quality of the water that will come from the manufacturing is frankly drinkable with a little bit of odor, so I wouldn't drink it. But it really does provide cleaner water than the brook that feeds the plant behind it. So the water coming out will enhance the water quality of the brook. The goal is to have a zero waste plant. So everything will be recycled, and what little bit can't be will be shipped into a local incinerator and generate power with it. So, sustainability is a big priority. It was a big priority for us when we were Kraft Foods. It was a big priority for us when we were Very Fine. It was when we were Sunny Delight. And part of the reason all three owners, it was a priority, is because we were part of that as well. So we're going to carry that legacy as a responsible employer, outstanding environmental sustainability, and it's a strategy, and it's part of how we run our business.
Are you saying you qualify as a green manufacturer?
Pardon me?
Are you saying you qualify as a green manufacturer?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
Do you qualify as a green manufacturer?
Do you qualify as a green manufacturer? I don't want to say that, but probably. There's other things we have to do with lighting and other things, but we would love to be able to say that someday.
Okay, I hope you manage that qualification. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Jen Stack, 40 Bulkley Road. You guys got a big crowd tonight. Congratulations. Apparently you're a big draw. My question is sort of a follow-up on the traffic and the general impact on what's going to be going on. I know that when I go down into the town of Air and pass by the locations that you have currently, I see a lot of semi-traffic. And I wonder if you would be willing to give us some numbers about trucks coming in and out, if you could project that over. I know initially it'll be smaller numbers, But when you're up and running at your full capacity, how many trucks a day?
Well, I'll reflect back to when we were at our prime as Sunny Delight. We would have 50 trucks per day coming in with raw materials, and we would have 100 trucks per day leaving with finished goods. So about 150 would be that peak that we would love to get to, because that would be pretty much a full plant.
And those trucks go predominantly down Taylor, or they go over to 110?
They have to, I don't think they can go down Taylor. I think they have to go down King Street or 2A.
So 150 trucks up and down in front of the school?
Through a 20-hour day. You can spread it out through a 20-hour day, and that's the peak period. Now, when we get started, very, very little traffic, and it ramps up through a 5-year period.
Okay, so 10 trucks, 20, yeah, okay. So, hey, look, these are legitimate questions about the quality of life for people who live in this town. And it's a bigger question than just the tax implications. It's the damage to the roads for increased traffic. And these are things we need to consider. We're gaining a tax advantage of $200,000 a year, but we're running a lot of vehicles on our roads. And that's money we have to come up with when those roads start to fall apart. These are legitimate points that need to be investigated before we vote on something like this. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Good luck.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir?
Hey, Dave Markapole, Snow Drive. Just a real quick question. If I understood correctly, you guys have a couple different facilities now, is that correct?
Yes. Yes, there are 2 Pepsi plants in Air, right side by side, just before you get to the traffic circle.
Not that I'm against you guys coming here and bringing business to Littleton, but I was just curious, what was the impetus to come here and spend almost $23 million on renovating an older facility as opposed to expanding one of your current facilities?
We are pretty well landlocked where we are, and we're pretty close to capacity where we are. So adding another production line to those facilities is impractical at this point, particularly with the very fine plant being just down the street, with some of the equipment that we already need, and certainly the infrastructure that we need to make some of the newer things that we're going to make. For example, neither plant in Air makes Gatorade, and Gatorade is possibly one of the first things that would be made here in Littleton. There's a number of water items. We make Aquafina water in Air. It's coming out with some new sizes, some different brands under that label, where again, we don't have the capacity or the size in our plants in Air to do it. So we would like to expand that capacity here into Littleton.
Okay, and if I may ask one more question. Once everything's up and running, are we allowed to, is the public allowed to take tours of the place to see our new business in town?
Tours are difficult from a safety standpoint at times. We have, and particularly in the days when I was at Very Fine, we did, take some carefully chaperoned school groups through. We do that to a small degree in Air, but we don't really advertise it. You may recall the company store that was there. I don't know if we're going to be able to reopen that or not. Pepsi does discontinue things every now and then, and that might be a possibility, or we have some things that are slightly damaged and can't be sold. That might be a possibility. But yeah.
I was just thinking more for school tours and things
yeah,
like that.
We work with the schools. We always have, always will.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Jen Wilson, Sanderson Road. Previously, when Very Fine owned the property, they had a somewhat, I don't know if it was an official agreement with the neighborhood, but they honored, noise complaints and worked really well with the neighbors nearby. And I'm curious about your, decision to work with neighbors.
This is a pretty unique situation, and it's the same 2 guys. I started there in 1987, worked to 2000. Dan started in 14-something. He's much older than he looks, and was there until 2013. So, yes, the Rouse family owned a business, but we work for them, and yes, you know, we want to be a good neighbor. We don't want to be disliked. So.
Specifically, I should have mentioned trucks beeping at night.
Thank OSHA for that one.
Yeah. Okay. We don't like trucks beeping at night either. So.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Is the outcome of this vote going to affect your decision to come to town? And the follow-on to this is, philosophically, this looks like just another one of those breaks that big business gets. But is the real value with this being the enabler to get the much larger state grants than the local tax breaks?
Yes.
To the first or the second?
Yes to both.
So you will come in regardless?
We're coming regardless.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Andrea Curran, Middlesex Drive. There's a house that I believe goes with that property that was Margaret Thatcher Drury's house. Do you have any plans for it?
Not today, but I am very, very familiar with that house. And my friend John Bauer, who's here, it'll be maintained.
Yes, sir.
Phil Lawrence, 18 Howard Avenue. I understand the town laid off 1.5 people when Very Fine or Yum Yum closed. Is that true?
They don't.
No, that's not the case, is what I'm hearing.
So the water department didn't lay anybody off or terminate anybody? That's what you're saying?
If Mr. Ivan.
That is true, yes.
All right. Another question. Are you saying you draw water off the stream that runs by your plant?
No, we do not.
Do you discharge into that stream?
Yes.
So you draw water from the aquifer and discharge into the stream because it's virtually dried up.
Well, essentially, the water comes in from the town supply. We use it for manufacturing. Then whatever water we don't use to make the product itself, we clean it, and then it goes out to the brook.
Do you have any estimate of what that would be? Or was?
At one time, well, there's some wells on the property for non-potable water. So between the discharge of some of that, maybe 250,000 gallons per day.
Okay.
That's on, you know, when you get to peak period. You know, when we get back to those 150 loads per day, full production, about 250,000 gallons per day.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Ready? Hi, I'm Shannon Alamendoza, Foster Street. I want to piggyback on the woman's comments, and I fully agree regarding the traffic. So I think everyone here would agree traffic is out of control in Littleton, especially on that street. Housing properties have gone way down. It's like fence alley. People are putting fences in front of their home. It's all truck pollution. Kids that are at the high school can hardly even walk down those sidewalks because it's just non-stop trucks. So I'm certainly not satisfied with the answer of it's the same as Sunny Delight traffic flow, or it's going to start off at 10 and then maybe go to 150. And town donations, to your point, what did you say, $1,000 to Christmas lights? I don't really know who that benefits. So I think we really need to look seriously at this. The master plan needs to take this into account. And yeah, financially there's maybe some immediate upside, but I don't really think it's to the town advantage or the residents. So high school kids driving on that road, congestion, and are you looking at Fort Devens facilities at all? I mean, those facilities are set up for that. Well, I don't understand why. You're already in air, you've maximized. So Can I have some?
We are not looking at Devon's.
No. So, and will there be a transportation plan? So if this goes down, are you working with the town to kind of facilitate what's the best solution to consider the traffic flow, the environment, pollution, things like that?
We plan to be a responsible neighbor, and we would work with the town whenever we can to help.
So what if... And I have friends that are in Air on that road. What have you done in Air to be a responsible neighbor along that road? Well, if they haven't done it in Air, they're not going to do it in Littleton. I'd like
We got
an
one more
answer.
person in line. We're going to hear from this
Oh,
person, then we'll move to a vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, Gabrielle Eidenwild, 123 Harvard, so right around the corner. I know that we're talking about $20 million plus investment into this plant. How much of a guarantee do we have that you're going to be using local contractors, local labor, local businesses for that $20 million plus dollars?
We'll be using local employees to work at the plant. We use local contractors, and I mean, a lot of the things are really, really specialized that have to be done. But we've always used local folks whenever we can. We use the local hardware stores, we use local lumber yards, we use local appliance stores, we use, for anything that we need in the plant, we try to use local people to the best of our ability. There are some things that there's just no one locally who can do them. Various installers of stainless steel welders, that sort of thing. So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think we're ready to move to the vote. I'll read the motion once again. Moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen that the town vote to approve Article 1 as printed in the warrant. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? Okay, that's clearly a majority vote here. We just have to wait to get the precinct reporting from the cafeteria. But and once we get that, all right, I've been told it was a majority vote also in the cafeteria. Thank you, Deputy Moderator Ravella. And so the motion passes. I do declare it a vote. And now I'll entertain a motion to dissolve special town meeting number 2 and return to special town meeting number 1. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Special town meeting 2 is dissolved and becomes part of the pages of history. And now we move back to Article 5. We had just voted on Part A. Now for Part B, which is a $20,000 appropriation, town government building study needs, space needs assessment. I'll turn to Selectman Glavy for the explanation of Part B.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If you can remember back before the second special town meeting, we were in the middle of Article 5, which contained 3 items that are all planning study related on different topics that are all parts of the Selectmen's goal-setting objectives for the current year. Selectman DeCoste spoke to Article 5A relative to the needs assessment for the fields. 5B is a town government building space needs assessment, and it's a direct response to some proposals that we've been entertaining as a town with regard to possibility of moving or building a new library or renovating in place. Also needs that are consistent with the board's goals to address senior center needs in their space. So all of that has a residual impact on the facility on Shattuck Street, and we realized we needed to get a professional assessment of what those what our space capabilities are there, what the current activity holds, what possibilities for expansion and renovation we have there, so that we have a better grip on things when we get into the phase of deciding what to do to accommodate needs for Council on Aging, Park and Rec, and Library. So that's what this study is for.
All right. Anyone wish to speak to Part B? Yes, sir.
Bob Stetson from 186 Goldsmith Street. I'm a member of the board of the Council on Aging. I am not against the proposal. I think it's fine. I'm not sure it's enough money because I think that it needs to be an assessment of the needs of each of those departments and where they can be taken care of, not just look at the building to say how can we split it up differently. And I think that's important that it be put to the people who are doing the assessment, that they look at the needs of each of those departments and how they can be addressed both in the building and beyond it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone, Mr. Glavy? Yes.
Fair point, Bob. In fact, I think that's our anticipation. I don't think we view this as being the end game in terms of determining the ultimate space needs answers for any of those departments, but we need to know where we stand with that building before we start making judgments about moving steps outside of the building.
Okay. Anyone else? On Part B? If not, we'll proceed to a vote on Part B, which is to transfer $20,000 from overlay surplus for the purposes of... Okay, go ahead, please.
So you're asking for $250,000 tonight, and if I understand this correctly, you need about $600,000.
This is Part B. This is this is the $20,000 for the.
I knew that. I knew that.
Okay. Hold that thought. Anyone else with respect to Part B? A $20,000 transfer from overlay surplus. We'll take one vote at the end also to tie it all together, but all those in favor of Part B, the transfer of $20,000 from overlay surplus for a town government building space needs assessment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. It passes by the necessary majority. Majority in the cafeteria as well. Okay, we'll now move to Part C, Littleton Common Sewer Strategic Plan. And this would be a $252,000 transfer from overlay surplus for that purpose, and I'll recognize Selectman Glavy once again.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We have a little bit of a presentation here of PowerPoint, and with me tonight to speak to Article 5C are both the former chair, or actually the current chair, of the Littleton Common Sewer Study Feasibility Committee, Megan Ford. Where's Megan? Come on up. And also former Board of Health member, Executive Director of the Charles River Watershed Association, who served as a consultant to the study that was completed in 2011, Bob Zimmerman. And they're going to help me make this presentation. And you have the clicker there, do you? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, Article 5C, I understand that there's a lot of detail here that people may be interested in, and there's also a lot of other items that people came out tonight to hear. So we're going to try to make a happy medium of addressing important topics briefly and entertain questions afterward. How we got here is as simple as this. As long ago as 2001, both the Water Department and the Board of Health approached the then Board of Selectmen with grave concerns about two related topics. One being the fact that most of our well sites are located in a part of town that feeds the usage in the common area, which is down gradient, and most of that turns into wastewater, which is put into septic systems and does not return back to feed our wells and aquifer. At the same time, in the common area specifically where those septic systems are, there was increasing concern about soil nitration of the soil. So the recommendation at that time was that the town consider a town sewering in the common area, and actually at that time there were two other areas in consideration as well. Following that, as secondary point, both the assessors and the Economic Development Committee did some studies that realized that sewering not only has an environmental benefit to the town, but also has a significant opportunity to help the town in economic and planning considerations. So actually back in 2005, some old hands at this game might remember we had a vote at a town meeting. At that time it was a borrowing article that required a 2/3 vote. A majority of the town supported the article then, but it was not a 2/3 vote, so the process at that point stopped. The problem didn't go away, however, and the selectmen subsequently appointed the sewer feasibility committee that I mentioned that Megan had chaired. In 2010, after engaging Charles River Watershed Association to produce the 207-page report extensively studying our options and our needs, the feasibility study committee unanimously recommended that we go forward with smart sewering in the town common area. The next phase is where we're at right now, and that's funding the first of what will probably be 3 town meeting votes to address this. The issues have not gone away. They're becoming actually more pressing by all evidence. And so both unanimous votes of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee support this $252,000 amount, which will fund the build-out analysis and the initial design phase. We'll return in the spring with the second phase of that, and there would be a subsequent one, a subsequent town meeting article that would address the actual borrowing for the construction. I'm going to ask and turn the mic over right now to Bob Zimmerman, who can address, let's see, who can address some of these topics. Bob?
So I've been told that I have to keep this under an hour and a half. Let me see if I can do this in a couple of minutes for you. The idea is to take water from about 100 properties, I think it's 98 specifically, from the common area in the industrial zone across I-495, capture all the wastewater from those sites, treat it, have the water that's been treated, make it drinking water standard, not use it for drinking water, put portions of it back into the aquifer it was taken from, where it will increase flow in Beaver Brook and sort of help us in situations like what we've been experiencing over the last year, and especially over the last 8 or 9 months with the drought we have. It will also alleviate, actually eliminate the nitrate problem in the groundwater there. When you discharge wastewater into a septic system, the nitrate content of the water that then bleeds out into the soil is about 65 milligrams per liter, and once it gets diluted, the background, normal background in our part of the world is 1 to 2 milligrams per liter, or 1 to 2 parts per million, okay? If that ever gets to about 20 parts per million, it can cause a serious problem called blue baby syndrome, which we don't want to get into because it will take me a while. Just say it's a bad thing. And nitrate levels in the common area are in the 5 to 7 milligrams per liter or parts per million right now. If they get to 10 milligrams per liter, the State Department of Environmental Protection will require us to install a sewer there. The problem with them requiring us to install a sewer there is that we would lose the benefit of grants and low interest rate loans from the state and the Environmental Protection Agency. So we would like, I think, to get borrowing at a lower level. And then the third element here is that in the area, all of the businesses downtown are restricted for water discharge because they're on small lots, they're very dense, and the septic systems cannot treat to the levels necessary for discharge to the groundwater. So CRWA between 2010 and 2012, with a consultant out of New Jersey, worked on developing a program. I think the restrictions that we faced were to come up with a sewer system for those 98 properties that the rest of us in town wouldn't have to pay for. And I can tell you that can't be done with a conventional sewer system. However, it can be done if you use the wastewater to do some interesting things. The organics in wastewater mixed with food waste can generate energy. They can produce, through an anaerobic digester, methane that can be burned to spin a turbine and generate electricity. That electricity can be sold. The water itself, when it comes into a wastewater treatment plant, is hot. I'm sure most of you have heard of geothermal heating and cooling for homes. Geothermal depends on water that's 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Wastewater is 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit when it comes into the building for treatment. It has almost double the energy as geothermal. That water can be used to heat and cool surrounding buildings, okay? So you got electricity, thermal energy. You have the reclaimed water itself. Once treated, it meets state of Massachusetts potable drinking water standards. Now, you would never drink this, but it can be used for industrial process and cooling water, the same for commercial businesses. It can be used to irrigate lawns. It can be used to flush toilets and the like. And when you do that, you reduce demand on your primary water source, potable water source, and you also begin to build resilience to drought. And the last things that it can produce are fertilizers, Class A fertilizers for sale. And it also collects tipping fees. There would be 4 trucks a day coming off I-495 to deposit 80 tons of food waste at the site, which would be mixed then with the organics from the wastewater to develop the methane to generate energy. And you charge 2 to 3 cents a pound for the collection of that food waste and its treatment. So you with me? Electricity, thermal energy, fertilizer for sale, collected tipping fees, and the sale of reclaimed water. The sale of all those utilities helps drop the cost to the 100 property owners so that they can actually afford the betterment fees and the costs on a monthly basis for the operation of the plant. And the last thing I want to say about this is we've all seen wastewater treatment plants, right? Forget about those. This is not one of those plants. This is a plant that's totally enclosed. There's no smells on the other side of the wall. There, you could go to Battery Park in New York City, and I could take you to 6 residential buildings, high-rise residential buildings, condos, where the condos sell for in excess of $1 million apiece. Each one of those buildings has one of these plants in its basement, and they were the only plants that didn't go down during Hurricane Sandy. So that's my, I hope, not more than 3-minute summation of the work that we did and what the town has an opportunity to design tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I joined the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Study Committee back in 2010 because I was a resident that spoke up when the town voted to form this committee because I wanted to know why they weren't doing an economic study first. I thought that was the normal order of things. And subsequently, I was asked to join the committee as a citizen at large, and I did. And then later on, I became the chair. And that was back in 2010 when I was in my 30s, and it's 6 years later, and I was looking back in my notes today, and I found the letter that was written to the Board of Selectmen by the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Study Committee that I chaired, and it was dated October 16th, 2013, where our committee voted unanimously to insert an article onto the fall town meeting warrant. And 3 years later, it is finally here, so I'm very excited to be able to talk about this. I'm going to first just kind of review the benefits of the smart sewer system that our study looked at with our consultant that you just heard from. I'll be repeating some of this because it's a very complicated topic. It's hard to kind of get your head around it. But there are both economic and environmental benefits to the smart sewer system. I just want to reiterate that the area that we're talking about sewering goes from CVS, to the Littleton Inn, Toyota to the police station. So that is the business district. That's the area that we're studying. And the economic environmental benefits I'm going to talk about, but mainly groundwater protection. The treated affluent from a smart sewer system is up to drinking water standards. So we would be cleaning the groundwater. It replenishes the groundwater, and it would extend the life of our wells, and it would enhance the flow and water quality to Beaver Brook, and it would end the nitrification of the groundwater. As far as aquifer replenishment, that means that the water that's treated would not go somewhere else. It would come back to our watershed. It would return the water to where it came from, which would be wonderful for our wells if there was ever a drought. This is a sustainable, energy efficient designed system with many environmental benefits, but I also want to talk a little bit about the economic benefits. When I joined the study back in 2010, that was the primary thing that we were looking at that time, to stimulate the economy and find a way to make the Common a more diverse business type of community, and what can we do to improve the economy of our town. I can tell you that when I started the study, I'm going to give you a personal anecdote because I think that's the best way to kind of explain this. I work professionally as an audiologist, and I was employed at UMass Memorial Medical Center. And I decided, just coincidentally, during my time on this committee, that I wanted to start a private practice, and I'd like to have a private practice in Littleton that I could walk to. And I took my daughter to Littletown Toys and saw there was a vacancy next door, and I called the number as I was writing a business plan, and I met with the landlord, and I said, you know, I would really like to start a private practice. I live right down the street. I could walk here. So the business plan went on. I got a loan. I signed the lease, and then when I went to the town to get approval from the town inspector to do my construction, I was told that I may not be able to have a practice there because I am considered to be medical, and medical facilities use more septic than like a lawyer's office or other things like toy stores and consignment stores. So I started to panic because I already signed the lease. I didn't know what to do, and I went to the Board of Health. The Board of Health had to run an entire calculation of all the businesses that were in the building that I practiced. And by just a few gallons, I was allowed to go into that building. And I started my practice, and then Littletown Toys went out of business, and the bridal store went out of business, and here I am with 2 big vacancies right next to me for over a year. And my landlord, who lives in Carlisle, who really wants a sewer system for that property, he tried to get so many tenants to come by. And I remember one day I met somebody that was a prospective tenant, and it was a laundromat service. And they could not come because I had already made the septic system go up to their capacity. So that's just one anecdote. I also understand the butcher in Westford was interested in coming to Littleton Common and was told he couldn't. I understand there was a florist who tried to open up a shop in the Common in one of the vacancies and was told they couldn't. I think there's a cafe in town that has to cook off-site because they can only have a griddle because of limitations. There is a clothing designer in the Common who cannot be fully productive because of washing machine and laundering limitations. These are just some things to kind of understand why there are vacancies and why sewer is so important. Some of the specific services that Littleton residents say that they want cannot locate to the Common due to septic limitations. Any restaurant or food service business that doesn't already currently exist would not be able to now locate here. The master plan. So the town adopted and voted at one of these meetings to have a village common overlay district with mixed use zoning, but we currently cannot use this because of the limitations with the lack of sewer. And now what we're seeing is sprawl occurring elsewhere. People are going outside to develop, outside of the business district to develop. A smart sewer would inhibit sprawl, and it would direct the growth to our business district to fill the vacancies. It can be used as a tool in that way. The smart sewer system that we looked at is paid for proportionally by the users of the system only, not the taxpayers. It would be paid for by betterment fees and user fees. The betterment fees were estimated to be about $5,000 to $10,000 for every 330 gallons. That's about the size of a 3-bedroom house. And the monthly user fees were estimated to be about $30 to $80 a month. You heard from Bob as to why some of that is affordable, but it's also affordable because, remember, it's proportionally paid for by the users of the system. Some of the commercial properties in the common area are huge properties. They would be carrying the brunt of the cost, where the smaller commercial properties would pay much less. Also, as it is designed, our consultants have told us that this type of system is eligible for grant money from the Department of Environmental Research, the Mass Clean Energy Center, which could help to subsidize the cost and make it even more affordable. And as part of our study, we did, because I required it, hire an economist, Don Zizzi, from Boston University. So an economic market study was done as part of the sewer study. And what he found was that he estimated that at full build out, with all the extra commercial tax revenue that this system could generate for our town, we would have at minimum an extra $2 to $2.5 million per year in tax revenue, with potential for even more. Now, there's a lot of concerns and frequently asked questions that I want to review. One of them is, are you required to opt in? No. If there aren't enough people to opt in, then it won't be built. There is a requisite number of people that would be required to opt in order for this system to work, but it is a very small system. There's about 98 commercial properties on site, and the town will not force anyone to opt in. As far as tax impacts and risk, there will be no impact on the taxpayer. It will be paid for by the users of the system only. But as the case with any major public work project, the town is borrowing the money and will be assuming responsibility for the loan. That is why you have to vote tonight on this. It is estimated to pay for itself in 6 to 7 years. This type of smart sewer system has a very low rate of failure, so the risk really would only be if all of the commercial properties and businesses in the town common were to suddenly just up and move away. And as far as zoning, currently, the Littleton Common is zoned for mixed-use development, where apartments and condominiums can be on top of businesses and restaurants and attorneys' offices, etc. Commercial property owners are currently restricted from taking full advantage of this type of mixed-use zoning. It's basically waste, it's not being used. But also there's concern about if there's a sewer, will that change the look of our town character? And there's no need to worry about that because there are current zoning restrictions in place so that the highest building that currently exists, nothing can be built higher than that right now. And there's no big box stores allowed. There's a square footage restriction. That could only... That could only be...
Sir, let the presentation conclude. Thank you.
Zoning can only be overturned by a vote from the public. So the only thing that could happen is beautification of the common from this point forward, if we were to get a sewer. So just also as an example, both the towns of Harvard and Groton have sewered their downtown and have continued to maintain their town character, as an example. Other people have asked, will this system smell? And you've heard from Bob that it's a closed loop system. It will be completely enclosed in a building. Nobody will know what it is. And as far as the location, where will it be? The exact location has yet to be determined, and it will be determined if this passes as a next step, but it will be much smaller than you imagine. It's similar to a 1-acre building lot. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Bob and Megan have said all the very important stuff. I'm just going to run through this very quickly. If tonight's article passes, the next steps from the town would be to apply for the Department of Environmental Resources grant to hire a design engineer to sign up the sewer users, all of whom have been approached a few years ago, and to begin the build-out analysis. Our next step after that would be to return at a Maytown meeting for an article to move forward on a 30% design, which I guess is standard practice for construction projects of this type, and then there would be a third vote at a future town meeting on a full design and build out in the funding, borrowing funding associated with that. Thank you for your attention and patience, and we'll be happy to answer questions or entertain any comments.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, anyone that wishes to be heard, please come to the microphone.
Hello, my name's Ed Foltz, 619 Newtown Road, and I understand the concerns about the common and the sewering and what have you, but I have a serious concern that the minute you put sewer in the common, everybody here has seen the traffic the common gets. I don't want more businesses in there. I don't want millions and millions of people, I don't want it built out, because you're talking 2.2 million in additional taxes, but to get that, we lose what little bit we have left of our town. We are in an ideal location, Route 2, 495, it's an awesome place, but that awesome place has pressures. Building pressures are the biggest thing that we fight. We've done a great job of protecting open space. Yeah, our common has sewering problems, and I don't have a problem with us fixing that issue if we do it in a way that does not allow more development in the common.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll go to microphone 2. Yes, ma'am?
Jenna Brownson, 142 Harvard Road. When this came up a few years ago, I recall hearing from people in the lake area who were wondering why the sewer wasn't going to extend up to that area where there are septic systems which are very close to Long Lake. So I was wondering if this time around, if that's going to be part of the consideration, or is the footprint what you suggested at the beginning between Toyota, the police station, and the other two going west and east. I don't recall what the limits were on those. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question, Jenna. And when this was first floated as a proposal from the Water Department and the Board of Health back in 2001, they'd actually designated 3 areas of town that needed sewering for hydrological reasons, for environmental protection reasons: the Long Lake area, the Common, and the Depot. For whatever reasons, over time, the focus had become on the common area. It's the area of most critical need. And this article specifically speaks to that. I personally hope that if we have success with this, that the town will be more open-minded to considering that in subsequent iterations. But by no means is that, it wasn't a part of the study, and it's not a part of this proposal.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Harvey Atkins, Newtown Road. 252,000 would update the 2012 program. How much updating? I mean, you've got a plan, you've had an original plan. Why does it cost so much to bring it up to 2016? The other thing is $600,000 total estimate build out plus 30%, so that puts it up to $800,000. No? It says plus 30%, right?
The 30% is the build-out, the design. At the end of the expenditure of the $600,000, the build-out design for the pipes and the plant itself would be at 30% complete.
That'll be, what, say that again, it'll be 30% complete?
So to get to 100%, you need to apply to the Clean Water Fund in Massachusetts for I think it's someplace between $4.3 and $7 million total for the plant and the pipes. So the $600,000 would be spent to get to a 30% to design, and contracts on where you locate the plant itself, and contracts with those properties who want to opt in for the sewer system, so you know the size that you're building.
I see.
And then with that full expenditure, up front, the $252,000 will be used to go to the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. They have grants available for this, specifically for this kind of effort. There's a very good chance that Littleton will qualify for someplace between a $50,000 to $150,000 grant. So the $252,000 in the best circumstance could very easily be $400,000. And the town would be coming back to you next spring once they have contracts to know the size of the plant, where it's going to go, who it's going to serve, and specifically what the cost will be for construction at that point.
Yeah. Now, it's $4.2 million smart sewer proposal as of 2012. Does that mean that it's gone up in the 4 years?
There were 13, there was either 13 or 19 different iterations of the plant that we came up with in the study to try to go from impossible, a typical common sewer would not work here, to something that we could actually make work here and that would return money to the town. And in those, there were only 5 plans. In those plans, you can do just the sewer system. That's $4.3 million, as I recall. Don't hold me to this because I haven't read that report in quite some time. And I think with all of the energy producing elements, the plant rises to a total of $7 million, but the income from the generation of the energy and the reclaimed water actually exceeds their expense. So that in point of fact, the $7 million plant is cheaper to the users than the $4.3 million plant.
Now, I hear you're going to be trucking in garbage from other locations?
Yes.
Location. Now, I heard one of the possible locations is down like across from Littleton Lumber in the woodlands behind the town hall, the senior center, et cetera. I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard that that's one of the proposals.
idea would be nobody's going to locate a plant like this on a residential neighborhood street. The idea is to get as close as possible to an off-ramp to I-495 so that the trucks can come off there and come directly in. And the total number of trucks we're talking about is 4.
A day.
A day.
And you're talking about getting refuse from supermarkets, what's the source?
The state of Massachusetts has a law that requires that the 350,000 tons of commercial food waste generated every year actually get treated. They can't go to landfills because they produce a lot of carbon dioxide and methane. So we would be going, I think we did 1 mile, 5 mile, and 10 mile radiuses from the general area of plant location and found, a tremendous amount of food waste available. The idea would be to contract with those people, collect that food waste each day, and treat it at the plant.
Now, with this added feature on there, producing energy, is this, sorry.
Please.
My last question.
Please.
I'll move on, okay. With the, no, my train just pulled out of the station.
I totally understand that one.
Yeah, I've been waiting because I accumulated all these questions, What's the next question?
Something about energy, I heard.
Yeah.
Energy
well,
production?
is it considered still an experimental system putting this power plant on with the treatment plant?
I'm glad you asked that question.
I'm glad I thought of it.
Yes, I'm glad you did too. The company that we hired to actually design the plants for us and run the models is called Natural Systems Utilities. They're out of New Jersey. They currently operate, they've designed, built, and currently operate 210 such plants across North America. Now, they've never been used in this specific kind of way before, but the newest technology being employed here is called a microbioreactor, and it's between 35 and 40 years old. So no, there is nothing new here. The technologies, as a matter of fact, the very fine wastewater treatment plant is an anaerobic digester. It's virtually the same technology without the power generation.
I thank you very much, and I really think everyone here should know all these information and get it, and they can ooh and ah if they want, but they should have asked the questions too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's try to move it along a little bit. Yes, sir?
Mr. Marty, Portovella, 94 Grist Mill. I'm also the chairman of the Master Plan Update Steering Committee. It's from that perspective I offer these comments. Many of you folks have participated in the master plan process up to date, and I'd invite all of you to join in. 7 December is the next big meeting right here in the middle school. But to the point of the issue right here now, and that is we've had one visioning exercise where we had over 230 folks from town participate. We've had 2 charrettes, planning exercises, where it was a Friday evening and a Saturday morning, both instances. In the first instance, it was the common. It was dedicated completely to the common because of all the concern the folks here in town have for the common. So we did concentrate on that. Throughout this process, what we've come to learn is that there is certainly a need for some sort of wastewater treatment in the common area for what folks seem to want the common to be. Certainly there's some folks who would rather not have any more development in the town, any more development in the common, but there are also folks that would like to see something that produces more amenities to the town, tax revenue to the town, and all these things that folks have come up with so far that involves an increase in anything in the common requires some sort of waste treatment. So it's from that perspective I offer from the master plan update. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. First of all, I want to commend Mr. Zimmer for this presentation because the last time he presented this to the people of the town of Littleton, they didn't do a very good job in conveying the information that we needed to know about with regard to this smart sewer system here. And I was one of the people that was challenging him because I have a background in the environmental field. And I came in existence, before EPA came in existence, I was dealing with the environment. My concern here is that with this system and all the information you have in it, where do you plan on putting the plant, number one?
Well, there's several ways to answer that. So let me say, first off, we don't know. We did talk to many of the property owners in town and had a location at that time. But you have to remember, that was 2012. We didn't sign a contract. We didn't get to, the end game. The reason this money is necessary is to get to the end game, to actually have conversations with those same property owners and sign contracts and come back to the town with the exact location.
Now, the money that the town that you're asking us to vote for and to put up, I heard you earlier said that the businesses was going to pay for everything. The taxpayers wouldn't have to use any of their money. So who is this money that you're asking for now? Are you going to reimburse the town this money that you're asking for?
Yes, that's actually, what's that? Yeah. Yes, it's reimbursable. Money spent at this level, if we go ahead and build the system, would be paid back by the users. If we don't go ahead and build the system, the $252,000 is spent, and the engineers had a good payday. But that's, that's the reality of it. It is reimbursable by state statute, though.
Last question. With regards to the businesses, I understand that they're all interested in putting this smart system in up there. So if that's the case, I would tell the people here tonight, say what you will, sooner or later, get rid of these septic systems that you got. Right. Okay? So we
okay. All right, thank you. Jerry, you're next. I'm going to have to insist on one question or comment per customer. We've got folks in line, so.
Fair enough, then. I want to challenge Bob again on the energy production. I think you said, what, 80 tons a day of, I just did a mental calculation. In a year, that's about twice the weight of material processed by our transfer station. So it seems like the only way to get the electricity business to work is if we go into the garbage business. Is that correct or incorrect?
I'm going to step in here because you two could get into an extended scientific discussion. The 207-page report is online, and it has been at the town website for 4 years. This is And the next phase of the study will either bear that out or it won't. If it doesn't bear it out, we won't be back.
Right, but I just want people to understand the amount of material that's got to go through by Bob's calculations to make it work.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Joanne Derry from Harwood Avenue, and it seems to me there's a lot of bricks in the edifice that makes this whole project affordable for the 98 users. You know, the electrical generation and the tipping fees and all that. And coming from an engineering background, there's usually something unexpected. So if there's something unexpected and one of the bricks isn't there, or something doesn't work out, and the 98 users can't afford to pay, then who's on the hook? Because the town's borrowing the money. So are we, the taxpayers, on the hook to pay if the 98 users can't afford it?
Good question, Joanne, and there's two very simple answers to that. One, anytime the town's doing the borrowing for the construction, we are ultimately on the hook. But two, this next phase of the process is to get those 98 prospective users as signed, contracted agreeers to the system and bound to it. So they are, we're not going to come back with another phase of this proposal unless those folks make good on it. And whether or not they get the cheaper rates that are afforded if we do the full energy capturing portion of it or not, it's better. It's a better deal for them either way. It's just the best case scenario is the system that involves all of the recapturing of the methane and the rest of it. But the system alone was worth it to the potential users when the last time they were contacted. But that's the next phase of our process, is to get that in writing.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Tom Perrell, 7 Cobb Lane. I had a full head of hair when this whole discussion started. Folks, this is a no-brainer. If we want a vibrant downtown common area, all right, we've got to have a sewer system. We have to. All right, and I have a vision of a two-story parking garage behind the mill building, where we don't have congestion downtown, and that's certainly something that's on the table. I talked to a prominent business owner in town here who owns quite a bit of property, and without this sewer system, they're not going to build what they are intending to build on their property. So it's going to be critical that we get the sewer system in place, and $2 million in tax revenue. Sign me up. I move to vote, Mr. Moderator, if I can.
Is that Mr. Perrell, was that a motion to close debate? All right, a motion to, yes? All right, let me respond first, and then we'll get to the vote. Believe me, we don't operate our town meeting by Robert's Rules of Order. I understand the point you're making, but I think we're hearing a lot of the same kinds of comments at this point in time. So I think we're ready to move forward. In the interest of time, we got a long way to go. So there's a motion to close debate. It requires a 2/3 vote. It's not debatable. All those in favor of closing debate on Article 5, Part C, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Okay, that's a 2/3 vote by my ears. So, and it was a unanimous vote in the cafeteria. So debate is closed now on Article 5, Part C. I think we had a fairly lengthy presentation. We did have some discussion, so I'm comfortable with that decision. We'll move to the vote then on Part C. Moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen, the town transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $252,000 for item C, Littleton Common Sewer Strategic Plan. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? Okay, it's a clear majority vote and article and unanimous in the cafeteria. So now we have disposed of Article 5 in three parts, and we'll move now to Articles 6 and 7, which I suspect holds some interest to most folks here. They're both borrowing articles, rather significant sums of money for major capital projects. With that in mind, the Finance Committee has asked for a few minutes' time to briefly present and frame the issue for you of how the town proposes to finance these two projects. Then we'll get to the presentations on Articles 6 and 7. I recognize FinCom Chair Fred Faulkner.
Let's see here. Good evening. My name is Fred Faulkner. I'm this year's chair of the Finance Committee. We have three articles that are borrowing articles that will require a 2/3 vote. And the Finance Committee and Finance team have come up with three separate and distinct methods by which you will be paying for these three articles, assuming that they all pass. And I just felt that it was worthwhile spending a couple minutes to talk about this. The three articles, as you well know, are the fire station, Article 6, Alumni Field, Article 7, and the Williams property, Article 12. They total about $14.2 million, and at the end of the day, we'll be looking at borrowing in the neighborhood of $10 million. So I think it's worth a few minutes to just understand where the money's coming from and how we think is the best way to pay back the borrowing that we're going to be doing. I'll address them in the order that they're on the warrant. So the first one is Article 6, the fire station. It's about an $8.9 million bill. Of that $8.9 million, we're planning to use $2.9 million of cash, which is presently in the Capital Stabilization Fund. It's taking us 6 or 7 years to build up that amount of money. We were able to transfer it into the Capital Stabilization Fund about a year ago, and that's where we plan on using that money. So we'll be borrowing about $6 million, and that's the red part of the graph there. The first 2 years, we'll be using what are called bands, or bond anticipation notes, and it's like a construction loan, where all you have to do is pay the interest. And it's a very little bit of money for us for those first couple of years because of our AAA bond rating. We're able to borrow on a short-term basis for around 1%. So for the first 2 years, while we're building the station, we're not paying a lot back for it. In 2020, that it jumps up. Think of that as you build your house, now you're moving into it. The bank says, okay, now you need a mortgage. You got to start paying your mortgage. The mortgage for the bond or the payment for the fire station is about $600,000 a year for the next 20 years. So that's how we're funding the fire station. It's a classic build it, bond it, pay for it. Alumni, I think Steve Venuti and Bonnie Holston have come up with a really clever funding mechanism for it. On the 4th of November this year, the state changed the statute which allows towns to take bands or bond anticipation notes for more than 5 years. So they looked at our the capital spending. They said they thought we could handle about $500,000 a year to pay off $4 million for the alumni project. So we'll be able to borrow at about 1% for 8 years. So it's a little more than $500,000 a year for the alumni project. And the reason that happened was state statute changed a couple weeks ago, and we're jumping in and taking advantage of that. Now, we have thank you. Don't thank them. They're the ones that do the work. We do have, to be perfectly upfront with you, we do have very late breaking news where the state certified a higher level of new growth for the town than we expected. So as we go through the 2018 budget cycle, which we'll come back to you in May at the May town meeting for, we hope to be able to put some of that new growth directly towards alumni and lower that borrowing over the next 8 years. So I'm not sure how much that is, but I've talked to Chuck DeCoste, and we talked about that, and once we get into the budget cycle, we'll really try to do that and look for that in the presentation in May. Right? Okay, the third one is called the Williams land, and it's land. It's about 35 acres or so that will be in the conservation land. It's about almost $1.3 million. This one is coming out of what the Community Preservation Act fund balances. Every year, there's a 1% tax or increment above your real estate tax bill. If your tax bill is $4 million, $4 million. I won't go there. If it's $4,000, you're paying an extra $40. That goes into a fund for open space, historic resources, community housing, and there's a bucket called undesignated, which I'll give you a brief note on. And that adds up to about $250,000 a year. We get matching funds from the state on it. We also have the ability to, at May town meeting, if we have one-time funds, we can put it in there as well and get the match. And so far, the match has been around 30% or so. So I don't know where else you can get a 30% return on your investment immediately. So how are we paying for the Williams land? The first piece of the Williams land is a $400,000 grant from the state that we've put in for. If we don't get the grant from the state, we don't buy the Williams land. It may come back in the spring with some other funding mechanism, but at this vote that you'll be asked for tonight, if the $400,000 grant does not come through in December, or January, I think it's December, the deal is off. So, but of the 1.3, 400,000 is a grant. We're taking $260,000 out of the open space bucket. We're taking $210,000 out of what's called undesignated for a total of $470,000. That leaves us $403,000 that we will be borrowing and trying to pay off in 4 years out of future CPA funds. So the 1% surcharge on your tax bill, plus hopefully we'll be able to continue to put in supplemental funds, which we call blended funds, and get the state match. So the Williams land is paid for sort of out of 3 different buckets. One is the grant, one is CPA funds that you've already put in, and the state match, and we'll be borrowing about $400,000. So that's the 3 articles. What I'd like to do is not take questions at this point, but if you have questions on a specific funding of a specific article, we'll try to address those when the article is on the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know if this is a point of order or not. Oh, sorry.
Yes, sir.
In the interest of many of the young families who are here to support alumni, I'd like to make a motion to hear that first before the fire station.
Okay. Well, we can, town meeting, well, that obviously was a motion to take an article out of order. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Okay, so it's moved and seconded to consider Article 7 prior to Article 6. That requires a simple majority vote. So I'll get you in just a second. So I think we can accomplish that on a voice vote if. Can you hold on a second? I think that's a 2/3 vote. So you can do it. If the motion is majority, so it is majority. You can make it 2/3 vote. Okay. All right. We just confirmed with council that it's the moderator's discretion that it be a majority vote. There was someone at a microphone that had a question. I don't think it's pretty clear what the motion was in the second. Then, all those in favor of consideration of Article 7 prior to Article 6, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Well, I don't think we want to go to a ballot and checklist on that one. I'm going to say that that was not a majority vote, and we'll consider Article 6, and then we'll consider Article 7. Thank you very much. Article 6 is the expansion of the fire station facility, lease of temporary headquarters. It involves borrowing. It is a 2/3 majority vote. We will take that vote by ballot and checklist, and we're going to, in the interests of maintaining order, we're going to have you vote at that time by section. So we won't have the stampede to the voting box as we sometimes have. We're going to try to be a little more orderly. So when the debate is concluded and we do the vote, it'll be a ballot and checklist vote. I'll recognize Chairman Melissa Hebert of the Board of Selectmen for the presentation under Article 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Actually, can I take this off for you? Much more comfortable.
No, I'm sorry. Well, let me read the motion first. Yeah, then we know what we're talking. Moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen that the town vote to approve Article 6 as printed in the warrant in the total amount of $8,900,000, therefore, as follows: by transferring from the Capital Stabilization Fund the sum of $2,900,000, and 2, by appropriating and borrowing the sum of $6 million, and authorizing the treasurer with the board approval of the Board of Selectmen to issue any bonds or notes that may be necessary for that purpose, as authorized by Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, or any other enabling authority. The Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen support Article 6. I once again recognize Chairman Hebert for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Our fire department does an excellent job serving our community. It's absolutely critical that we ensure that they have a safe environment to work in, that they have the space that they need to do their job, to interact with the community, that it's ADA compliant, and even more than that. The chief and deputy chief and their whole team have done a fantastic job educating the community on the need for a new fire station expansion and involving them in the design process along the way. Chief's here and will give us an overview of exactly that. But before he does, from a financing perspective, and the chairman of the FinCom just kind of went over this, but again, selectmen have worked with our finance department, FinCom, and we have a financing method so that it is under the levy limit and not increasing your taxes to pay for this project. So that's 2.9 from the stabilization fund and $6 million in bonds. Again, Chairman of FinCom just went over that. So I'll let Chief take us through some of the fire station information.
Thank you. I will try to keep this as brief as we can so that we can move on to the next item. As they mentioned, the station on the left side here, that's the 4 sides of the building for the approved plans for the facility at $8.9 million. On the site, they will be removing the old police station as well as the rear garage for the current, where the current apparatus is stored on the facility. The timeline moving forward they would actually go ahead, if approved tonight, they would start construction within about a month's time, and with the goal to be back into the facility next year, December, to limit us to being outside of the facility for just one winter. The bids, actually, as they said, they're going to take the $2.9 million out of the stabilization and put it towards this project. So the main price would be $6 million to be financed. On that, the bids have actually come in. The bids have come in slightly lower than anticipated. So it's been a very positive process to this point. A few reasons why we need this facility. This building was built in 1948 as Town Hall. The main building itself is still Town Hall. It has not changed since Town Hall moved out in 1997. We've outgrown the space. There is nowhere in this facility to have decontamination for our medical facilities after we have ambulance runs. The equipment that we have is grown in size. The space that we have between the area where everyone gets dressed to go out on emergency calls and between the apparatus is only 3 feet. The current code requires 12 feet. As members are getting dressed and vehicles are pulling out, they run the risk of getting clipped by the apparatus as they're pulling out of the facility. On the left slide, you can see we've expanded into a trailer. We have since we went around the clock a few years ago, we've needed some living space, as well as an additional 4 office spaces that are inside that trailer. The rear garage, we've faced several issues with that. The roof has some pretty significant decay. They've put a patch system, basically rubber roof over that right now, as well as deterioration on the siding, the doors, and some of the other challenges is the space. We can't order any additional, like the ladder truck, for example. It's going to be 30 years old, and a new truck won't fit in this facility. So this is the new building. This is what it will look like. It'll have a community meeting space that expands out into the side parking lot right now. It'll have additional office space. It'll be going off of the existing station that'll be totally gutted out and redone, and it will move out into the rear parking lot. All of the apparatus will be able to be in the single space. We'll have decontamination areas. On the lower left photo, there's a training area, a 2-story training tower where the members can train on a daily, weekly basis, as well as carport storage in the rear of the building for the multiple trailers that we have on site. So that's as far as the facility. I can take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard? Anyone who wishes to speak with respect to Article 6? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I just wanted to say I think it's a no-brainer for the safety of our community that Article 6 should be passed, and I want to call this to a vote, please.
Well, I think I won't close debate with the first comment. I think I'll hear from the one remaining speaker, and then if we're ready for a vote, we can take it. Yes, sir? Two speakers. Mr. Sanders?
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. The thing I want to say is that we are fortunate here in Littleton that we have the people here that are looking out for our best interest and keeping their hands out of our pocket. All this here at this meeting tonight is within the levy. Growth and the max of 2.5% is what you're going to get hit every year with. So they're not asking us for more money by raising our tax. They're saying we're going to live within our budget just like you're living within your budget. And it doesn't get any better than that.
Thank you. Yes, sir, last one.
Bill Karomas, Lake Warren. Just curious, what kind of population can this fire station support? I mean, the current population, growth, et cetera. So how long would it, what kind of population would it be able to support as the town grows?
Thank you, sir. Chief?
This facility, including the living quarters on the second floor, we're looking to go into the next 40, 50 years for this facility. We have enough apparatus to currently answer all of the emergencies in this town. It's just going to require personnel. And we did take into account for the addition of personnel in the future.
Okay. Okay, anyone else who wishes to speak with respect to Article 6? If not, we'll move to a vote. One more. And I may reverse my previous ruling, and I think we may be closer to unanimity on this question than I had thought. So we'll take this final comment, and then we'll deal with that. Thank you, sir.
Charles Howe, 564 Newtown Road. I got a question for the Finance Committee. What's going to be left in the Capital Stabilization Fund after the reduction?
About 29,000. So obviously, part of the discussion in this budget cycle is if we have extra money, should we put it against the capital? Should we put some of it into stabilization to try to start building it back up again? As I mentioned, it took us, I don't know, 8 years or so to build up the 2.9 that we're spending towards the fire station. But yeah, we're bringing it down quite a bit.
Will this reduction have any effect on our bond rating?
No, it shouldn't, because there's a general stabilization fund in the town for a catastrophe, and we just stay away from that. And at this point, it's sufficient that the bond rating agencies are comfortable with the level that we keep in there, and we have a policy that says it needs to be at a certain level of our operating budget. But the capital stabilization can go up and down, and if we're using it for reasonable projects, they're fine with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I had indicated earlier we would vote using the ballot and checklist. However, I'm going to ask for a voice vote, and if it's unanimous, that's great. If it's not, that's fine too, and we'll vote by ballot and checklist. So all those in favor of the motion as read under Article 6, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that's clearly not unanimous. I'm sorry. You might want to hold your applause for a second. What that means is we are going to have to vote by ballot and checklist because it was not a unanimous vote, which is fine. That's what we planned for. So we're going to, we don't reconsider votes at town meeting, but that's another matter. What we're going to do is ask you to, section by section, come up and cast your ballot, and we're going to start with the section to the far right, where a lot of the seniors have gathered around the TV screen. Please stay close to your seats. If you go outside for a breath of fresh air and you miss your turn to vote, that's going to be on you, and I don't think you'd want to miss that. So we're going to start with that section. We'll get the cafeteria. So don't go very far. If you need to use the facilities or get a drink, we understand, but we're going to get to your section in pretty short order. So a reminder, you're going to get a piece of paper that has a yes and a no on it. It's perforated. Tear it in half. Yes means yes and no means no. So If you're in favor, please vote yes. And if you are not in favor, please put the no tab in the ballot box. Thank you. The meeting will come to order. Please take your seats. The balloting is final now for Article 6, and the town clerk and her team will count those ballots, and I'll announce to you the result as it becomes available. In the meantime, we're going to move forward with Article 7, the Alumni Field renovation construction. First, I'll read the motion, then we'll have a presentation from the proponents, and then I'll have a few instructions for all of you as far as how I'd like to see the debate transpire. So we'll start with the motion, moved and seconded by the Board of Selectmen, that the town vote to approve Article 7 as printed in the warrant, in the total amount of $4 million therefore, as follows. 1, by transferring from the May 2, 2016 special town meeting, Article 4D, Alumni Field renovation design, the sum of $164,000. And 2, by appropriating and borrowing the sum of $3,836,000, and authorizing the treasurer with the approval rather of the Board of Selectmen to issue any bonds or notes that may be necessary for that purpose, as authorized by Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, or any other enabling authority. And you'll note that the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, and School Committee all support Article 7. I recognize School Committee Man Mike Fontanella for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mike Fontanella, Chairman of the School Committee, Vice Chairman of the Alumni Field Renovation Advisory Committee, which was formed after a vote in the spring 2016 town meeting that authorized the development of design documents and bid services for renovations to the Alumni Field facility, and to also consider both natural and synthetic turf surface for that. This was in response to issues with the facility that have been identified and contended with for many years, including the fact that it is the only active recreation facility in Littleton with bleachers and lights, and the only one that can serve larger scale games and events. It is 46 years old with no renovations. The bleachers are rusting, non-ADA compliant, and become more of a safety issue with each passing year. The concession stand is run down and has no indoor plumbing, and you can see here the total plumbing available at the facility. The press box is deteriorating and non-ADA compliant. The layout and condition of the sidewalks and lack of walkways inside the facility make it difficult to navigate for the elderly and the handicapped. Lack of other amenities such as plumbing and bathrooms. The playing surface is not conducive to other sports besides football due to the large crown, as well as being too narrow to safely accommodate sports like soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, and cheer. The playing field presents existing hazards to players such as soccer players and lacrosse players who have to contend with rock-filled ditches that are within proximity of the sideline. Cheerleaders are confined to narrow space between the bleachers and concrete poles. We have parking and traffic issues, especially during events at Alumni, the track, or the Russell Street School. We've deliberately underutilized the facility in an effort to protect the integrity of the playing surface. And the additional use of LH fields in the spring for lacrosse have stressed those playing surfaces to the point of failure due to overuse and no rest. This has become more of a pressing issue when the high school was built and the decision to leave Alumni Field down on Russell Street was made. We only had soccer and field hockey in the fall at LHS and baseball and softball in the spring. This volume and type of activity allowed those fields to rest during the spring growing season. We've grown our program since then with the addition of girls and boys lacrosse, which is stressing those fields based on the increased amount of type of activity, but also based on the fact that they no longer get to rest. However, it is not really feasible or ideal to move them down to Alumni due to the crown and the sideline issues. We formed AFRAC with representation from the Board of Selectmen, FinCom, other committees, and several community members at large. We met over 20 times from May to October. Our meetings were broadcast live on LCTV and available on demand after. We had 2 items on each agenda for public input, one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end. However, what actually ended up happening was that we solicited input throughout the meetings. And in fact, when we were working on the list of priorities for the facility, the meetings essentially evolved into a working session with all of the people in the room offering ideas and comments. Our meetings were well attended, and the committee was able to gather a great amount of community input. We also solicited input from other community stakeholders. The goal with these stakeholders was to solicit information on how to design the facility to maximize its benefit to the community while at the same time making sure we could maintain it. We gathered information on when and how often interscholastic and youth teams would practice and play, what types of equipment and amenities they would want and need. We talked to the highway department to get information on how they currently maintain that facility. We talked to the Booster Club to understand how they wanted the concession stand to work, as it is their primary fundraising source. We also had representatives from companies that specialize in installing and maintaining both synthetic and natural turf surfaces. We were able to gather and compare information on the installation and maintenance cost, as well as how much volume of play each type of field could support. We came up with a list of priorities. These were done before we hired our designer. The goal was to come up with a prioritized scope for the project that we could present to them, which is what you see here. As of right now, the current design includes everything in Tier 1 and Tier 2, but nothing in Tier 3. With PMBC, we then put out bids for a design firm, and after interviewing 3 firms, the town hired Gale Associates. They've been in business for over 50 years with a lot of experience with these types of projects, as well as having experience in Littleton on other projects. They also had familiarity with alumni, as they did the track design, and there were alternative designs in that project that considered a renovation of alumni. AFRAC worked with Gale to define the scope and priorities over several well-attended meetings, and this is the design that emerged from that process. The footprint of the playing field stays roughly the same, but is wider and safely supports and appropriately supports multiple sports. Jet field is reoriented and basically becomes a brand new softball field and baseball for youth baseball. ADA compliant bleachers that are roughly in the same spot with an increased capacity to 750. The development of a main entrance. Concession stand with plumbing. The concession stand also has bathrooms, including women's, men's, and a family bathroom. An ADA compliant press box. Safety netting on both fields here to allow for simultaneous use. Sidewalks, landscaping, and benchways throughout the facility. An additional parking with 50 spots along both these sides here. And improved traffic flow as you have these spots here. You'll have cars coming in this way and then coming out back that way. Sorry. Once we had Gale working on the design, the committee started to get into a deeper consideration of natural versus synthetic turf. We took the information we got from the Highway Department and Park and Rec on how much is currently spent on labor and materials just on the alumni field facility. We compared that to projected costs for maintaining a synthetic turf surface. You can see that right now the highway spends, over 180 hours mowing, watering, and line painting the facility. For modeling purposes, we assume that a synthetic surface would require 96 hours annually, which would be for brushing the field, and would also have other maintenance for manually redistributing the infill in high traffic areas or using magnetic devices to remove ferrous metal. Right now, the highway spends $3,300 on materials, including paint, fertilizer, seed. However, in the information we received at our meetings, it became apparent to us that we are underfunding and understaffing what would typically be recommended for a natural turf facility. However, for the purposes of our comparison, we left those at their current levels. While you don't need to paint or seed a synthetic surf, it is recommended that you do what is called a deep clean at least once a year, which can be contracted out. For the model, we decided to put twice a year in there. We then projected how much use through each type of surface we would be able to sustain. You can see that the difference is significant. It is primarily because if the surface is synthetic, it would be able to handle youth football practices in the fall along with field hockey games and practices and other activities such as varsity football and soccer games. And in the spring, boys and girls lacrosse as well as youth lacrosse would be able to use the field instead of just girls lacrosse. The ability to add those extra programs creates a huge jump in the hours of use and, very importantly, takes pressure off the natural turf fields that these programs currently play on, primarily at the high school. One other consideration is that there probably would not be an opportunity for rental income if the facility is natural turf, but other facility operators we received information from indicated that there is definitely a potential for rental income if the facility has a synthetic surface. We then projected these costs and hours of play over 10 and 20 years. You can see that over 10 years there is a difference of over $280 in cost per hour between the two surfaces. We also projected over 20 years. The fiber carpet of a synthetic surface would need to be replaced somewhere between 10 and 12 years after initial installation, so that cost is factored in at the start of the second 10-year cycle. However, you might notice that the number of hours for natural turf is less than double what it would be over 10 years. Again, based on the information we got, it is suggested that a natural turf facility be rested for an entire growing season, either the spring or fall, every few years to allow the grass to regenerate. We didn't factor that in during the first 10 years, but for the second 10, we assumed that the field hockey or girls lacrosse teams, who would be the primary users of a natural turf field down there in each season, would each take a season off at Alumni and play back at the high school every third year. When all of that gets factored in, again, you can see that the difference is still close to $200 for the two surfaces in cost per hour. We also considered the input we got from stakeholders such as the athletic director, varsity coaches, and youth sports leagues, as well as considering what has been identified over the past few years as a major issue at the high school. When we first built the high school and had the level of activity up there, the current labor and materials were sufficient to support that, but that was prior to the addition of high school youth and youth lacrosse. The fields at the high school are stressed to the point of failure due to the amount and types of use, and there's currently no rest during growing seasons for those fields any longer. A synthetic alumni needs no rest, and allows the LHA fields to get the rest they need. You also have some savings on labor and materials that could conceivably be directed to the other fields. Given all that, the committee voted to support a synthetic turf installation at Alumni. Once we decided on a synthetic surface, we had to pick a type of infill. Based on another vote at Springtown meeting last spring, the tire crumb rubber was not an option. We had gathered information from Gale Associates as well as another firm that specializes in synthetic surfaces and gathered information and considered these types of infills. We compared them all in terms of safety, playability, durability, environmental impact, and cost. We ultimately voted to recommend EPDM, which is a virgin crumb rubber, meaning that it comes directly from the manufacturer to us. We are confident that it will provide a safe and durable playing surface for all the sports that will use that facility. There's been talk about how we would maintain the facility. Typically, what we would see in a synthetic turf facility is the cost of the field comes with a device like this. It's a brush mower type thing that gets pulled behind a tractor. You would typically do that 2 hours twice a month during the year's time that you would play, which is roughly 8 months, so for 32 hours. You would also have other maintenance being done, again, manually raking the field in the high traffic areas to redistribute the infield, and conceivably using a device such as this to pick up metal out of the surface. The other thing that we talked about was the contracted deep cleaning. Those companies will come in and do inspect high traffic areas and replenish fill as needed, inspect seams and repair up to 100 feet of seams if they need repair, groom to level the infill and soften, decompact the field and straighten the fibers in the carpet, remove all ferrous metals with a magnetized machine, sweep all loose fibers and debris, and provide a full report on the status of the playing surface. These are the types of plans implemented at other facilities our committee members talk to, and is something we would definitely advocate for the Alumni Field facility. The hours necessary are almost half of what is currently done at Alumni, and the cost for the contracted services is equivalent to what we spend now on materials. And again, there is the possible ability for rental income to defray that. AFRAC did not do any work on the funding solution, which was done instead by the Board of Selectmen, so I have Chuck DeCoste here to talk about that.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you all. I'd like to first thank the members of the AFRAC committee, and these are 9 folks that put in a lot of time, did a lot of research beyond the 20-plus meetings that we had that were televised. These folks did a lot of research on their own. They went and visited a lot of fields and determined what would be best for our town. So as far as funding is concerned, I forgot to use my joke. 7 o'clock when this all started, I didn't have a beard. Thank you. I appreciate the sympathy. All right, so as far as the funding is concerned, so we've been working long and hard at this, and there's been a lot of possibilities kicked around. We've looked at grant opportunities. We've talked about the possibility of CPC funding. There's a lot of restrictions on whether or not what we could use CPC funding. The projected estimate is $3.9 million, and in some tireless effort of Bonnie and Steve Venuti, we came up with a plan that will not raise taxes, that will place the debt under the levy, and will actually help us in the funding of the fire station. So approval now allows the project to be bid by approving this tonight, it allows us to put the project forward and be bringing bids forward in a competitive bid period. So if we approve tonight, we put bids on the table, through like January, February, we put the bids in the street. There's a lot of firms out there that want to bid on projects in the winter when they're not busy, so we'll get more competitive bids. In theory, hopefully, we'll get lower bids. So that speaks to some of the timing. Again, I mentioned borrowing is inside the levy. We're using something that's called bands. The chairman of the FinCom alluded to this strategy earlier tonight. Bands are one-year bond anticipation notes, and essentially what we're looking at is spending about $500,000 a year for about 8 years, which would equal about $4 million. Right now, we allocate about $2.5 million annually for capital spending inside the levy, and that's spending that is from accumulated debt service reductions and estimated free cash. And if we spend about $500,000 on this project over the course of the next 8 years to continue to spend on capital expenditures. The amount being borrowed inside the levy remains at the same limits that have been carried over the past 10 years with the debt service that we've incurred for the high school and the Shaker Lane renovation. This funding strategy has been supported by both the Board of Selectmen and FinCom, and these are folks that you have either elected or have been appointed and are entrusted with good stewardship. We are in the financial state that we're in because of the people that we have in these positions. And at the position of that Bonnie's in and Steve Venuti's in, we are very conscientious. We live here too, guys. We want to do whatever we can that is the best decision for our town. Benefits: a multi-sport facility that will support 7 Littleton High School teams, over 150 players, and over 400 youth athletes. If we broke it down, there'd be more teams than that, because once you get into gender and JV sports, but there's 7 unique sports that will be played on these fields. That includes the softball, baseball field as well. So we're looking at increasing by about 600 hours of play annually. We'd end up having the same capacity as if we had 3 new natural turf fields. Mike kind of proved that out with his presentation. We're delivering a safe, ADA-compliant facility to support spectators of all ages and all abilities. Plumbing and bathrooms to appropriately support facility users. The facilities that we have now are an embarrassment, and we've had plenty of stories about folks that have had issues with the current facilities. One of the big things that we did add to this, and some folks have asked questions about, well, you were at 2.5. The concept design that we came to you with last year was $3.6 million. We pared that down to about 2.55, and looking at what folks wanted in our 20-plus meetings, we determined that we wanted to make sure that we made this a facility renovation, and we increased the parking, we improved traffic flow so that it would benefit the entire campus, not just the football field, which many people have termed this renovation. We're looking to improve the entire facility, which includes not just the football field or the rectangular field. It includes the softball field. It includes the track. It includes Russell Street School, Whitcomb Field, and the middle school as well. When there's a track meet going on down there, the kids that are using that track meet, young female athletes, have to go into a single porta potty that's outside that track facility to change or do whatever they have to do. These facilities, once built, will be available to other events that are going on down on that campus, and I like to refer to it as a campus. This addresses expansion of sports programs in Littleton. Mike mentioned that lacrosse has been added. Who knows what's going to be added in the future? And by having this surface and this facility, we'll be able to address those programs. It reduces pressures on natural turf fields that are incapable of supporting current levels of play. That's been proven out. Provides time to address overall field needs and maintenance. And Mr. Bagasa came up earlier and talked about the feasibility. Thank you all for approving that. We will be looking at all of the fields, all of the surfaces, what the maintenance required, what other fields possibly could be added to our inventory. I hope that in looking at this, many of you did come out and voted in favor of the track. I've mentioned the track a couple times tonight, and I would hope that you would see this as a facility. Some folks have referred this as a community, an outdoor community center, and quite frankly, I like to term it that way too, because it's not just going to be used for sporting events. We can use this for other events. We could do maybe movie night on the field and use the bleachers. I foresee picnics and a lot of other uses out here, so I like to refer to this as an outdoor community center. All right, project was unanimously voted by the Board of Selectmen, by FinCom, by School Committee, by Park and Rec, and by AFRAC. AFRAC, and pause. Speak for everybody in AFRAC. We'd like to thank everybody that came out, all the folks that sent us emails, gave us input, the folks from Gale Associates, the folks from other communities, other towns that have gotten on the phone with us, taken us on tours of other facilities, other athletic directors that have spoken with Mike Lynn, that have spoken with each of us. They've helped us through this process, and I'd obviously like to thank every one of you here tonight, and I ask that you support this article. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just have a few comments before we get started. I will remind you again, this is a borrowing article, requires a 2/3 majority vote. We will absolutely be using the ballot and checklist as our bylaw requires us to. We just went through that, so you know what lies ahead. There's not much we can do about that, short of a unanimous vote, and I don't think we're getting one of those here tonight. I think this is about the third time that we've talked about Alumni Field at a town meeting, one way or another, and I think we probably spent about 4 hours plus already talking about Alumni Field. I know that a lot of you have already made up your minds. I think that's the case. That's fine. But I want us to have a respectful and civil debate. I think the town deserves that. You all deserve that. You can disagree with folks without being disagreeable. You know, we don't need the cat calls and the boos and the hisses, and we're all grown-ups here. Let's let people express themselves, pro and con. You know, I don't think we need a lengthy debate. I think, 4 or 5 people could say the same thing that 40 or 50 people would say, essentially. So please be respectful and civil. I mean, these folks are your neighbors. All right. And with that, I will invite those who would like to speak to this question to come to one of the center microphones, and keep in mind that less is more sometimes. And
Dina Flockhart, Gilson Road.
Yes.
I have 2 short questions. One is, where do the buses go with the new parking?
The school committee will work that out. We have a couple of different ideas. There's a big benefit to the town and the contract if we are able to keep the buses in Littleton, and we will be able to do that. There's a couple different, we could conceivably manage to move them a couple different places at the middle school campus, depending on what was going on and how much the facility was going to be used on a given day or a couple of days. But we're also thinking about using the high school too. So we have solutions in mind, and we're going to work that out once we see if we get approval and it becomes an issue.
The second question is, who's going to maintain these new bathrooms to make sure they don't become an embarrassment?
Right. So that's a great question. Right now, the concession stand, as it is supported and taken care of by the Booster Association. We've gotten a lot of input from community groups that really want to support this project. There are opportunities we have a tremendous volunteer ethos in this town. So there will be opportunities for us to take advantage of that. Having said that, we can't defer that responsibility out of the town, whether it's a school system or Park and Rec. We need to work that out. Some of the things that have arisen during this whole thing about fields and the facility has caused us to take pause on the current memorandum of understanding that we have between the Highway Department, Park and Rec, and the school committee. We have all talked that it's time to sit down and revisit that. If this facility is approved and we know that we're going to be getting more amenities down there, that will be included in that memorandum of understanding, and it will get addressed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Center microphone. Yes, George.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. You know, Madam Clerk said that there was 900 citizens that came out tonight. at this special meeting. That's a lot of people. And I certainly appreciate all of you coming out here. And I hope that we'll do the right thing here on this article. Our children deserve the best. Raise your hand in here if you think your child don't deserve the best. We are here tonight to do for the future of this town. We want our children to have safe facilities to participate in the athletic ability that they have. And so Littleton been doing a pretty good job. And I would like to ask you tonight, if there's anything that you can do tonight to make this easy. If he asked for a voice vote, it ain't costing us no money. Why can't we just vote? And when he said the nays, the noes, nobody said nothing.
All right, thank you. Thank you, sir.
I thank you, Mr. Moderator, and I appreciate what the people of this town has done for the citizens here. And I tell you, you ought to be grateful to know that we have officials in this town that care not only about the taxes you pay, but they care about our children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. I've got breaking news to announce before we hear from our next speaker. On Article 6, the fire station article, there were 731 total ballots cast. There were 712 in favor, 19 opposed. So that obviously passes by the necessary 2/3 majority, and I do declare it a vote. Thank you very much. Yes, sir, Mr. Gibson.
Roland Gibson, Snow Terrace. For those who don't know me, I've been a resident for over 50 years. I'm not running for office. I've had the honor of serving on the school committee, the town government study committee, the school district pursuit of excellent task force, and a number of other community service projects. What I want you to hear is, I know a little about town government as a citizen consumer and as an elected or appointed governing agent. There are basically two groups of people in town. Those who are thrilled and delighted with town governance, the manner in which priorities are developed, and how decisions are made. Then there are those who are not thrilled and delighted. I identify with this group. Because of time, I'm going to do something that is very difficult for me. Be brief. So with your permission, I have two questions. Who determined the alumni athletic field is the single most important priority for the town at this time? Was this priority developed based on a referendum or some other town-wide process? Second question. I asked one of the town officials, how much did the town pay for the master planning process? And the figure I was given was about $150,000. Well, the master planning meetings that I attended and the draft I have seen, unless I missed something, I found one mention of athletic fields. I did find a number of other items and concerns and citizens listed, and here are a few. New community facilities, library, senior center, community center, fire station, recreation fields. When I moved to Littleton, I was 28. And over the years, senior citizen center and community center were frequently mentioned as priorities by citizens. What happened? Who made the decision they were not a priority for these 50 years? Now I'm 78, and citizens are still asking and waiting for a senior citizen and community center. How much longer do we have to wait? I'm trying to decide which will come first. The Senior Citizens Center and Community Center, or Badger will get his hands on me. Which is going to come first? I don't have another 50 years to wait. There are many other valuable items in the draft, and I'll only be another minute. One that caught my attention and was mentioned more than once, a critique of the least favorite things about Littleton. There were several, I'm going to mention two. Poor management of development and the need for improved town governance. What I want you to hear is, and I need to get dressed for this one.
He's almost done.
What does it say? Let's see, what year? 1955.
Okay, let's let him make his point.
I'm getting to the point. Be patient.
Thank you.
Thank you. When I was in high school, I was an athlete. In case you didn't notice, the jacket still fits. When I went to basic training right after graduation, I wrote to one person in school. It was my track coach. I value athletics, but I also question the process and whether this is the most important issue for this town at this time. However, I'm not going to tell you how to vote on the alumni athletic field. What I am going to tell you is whether you support or do not support the matter before us tonight, how you vote is going to send a powerful message to elected and appointed officials that you are thrilled and elated with the manner in which decisions are made and how priorities are developed. Littleton has the best government in the state, and all towns should model their governments after this one. Or you're sending another message. You would like to see the approach to town governance improved, as noted in the master planning process.
Thank you.
Jerry
All right, Senator
Open,
Mike.
State Road. A couple of comments. When I first read this article, my two words hit me: sticker shock. That we got from 2.5 mil up to close to 4. Looks like a big part of that's the baseball field. And artificial turf is what, about $600,000 or $700,000 on top of the base cost?
Yes.
Now, the real thing that nobody's added into the maintenance budget is putting away probably $50K or so to fund the resurfacing every 10 or 12 years. You need to factor that in. There's no question that artificial turf is going to be more costly. It seems like the best justification that you guys have given is that you get many more hours out of it, and that's ultimately a trade-off we're all going to have to make. I mean, I think it's a good facility for the kids. Oh, and one final thing, on a per-seat basis, back in 2000, Gillette Stadium, 66,000 seats, 330 million roughly, $5,000 a seat. $4 million, 750 seats. Believe it or not, it's about the same per seat. Obviously, here the bleachers are a much smaller cost, but I just wanted to present that to the town to see how expensive things are getting.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Jenna Brownson, Harvard Road. I have just a quick question with respect to the 3.9 estimate. I saw on your slide you had tiers 1, 2, and 3, with 3 being not factored into the 3.9 million. If when your cost estimates come back, because you're asking for up to 4 million, and they're all at, let's say, 4.3 million, you'll need to cut some things. I'm wondering if you have a list of what's on the chopping block first, and who makes the decision as to what gets cut?
Okay, thank you, Jenna. So we did have a couple of meetings where we prioritized what we wanted in the design. And once this goes out to bid, comes back, it's in the hands of the PMBC with guidance from whoever the project belongs to, and in this case would be the Board of Selectmen. So those decisions will be made with the PMBC as they have on the Russell Street School renovation. I was involved with that, the track. So those decisions will be made based on the priority list that was put together with this committee and with the guidance of the PMBC with input from the Board of Selectmen.
And is that list something that you have available to look at, so that those of us who might think that the snack shacks concessions is super important, if that's first on the list, we might be reluctant to vote for fear that that could be cut, versus someone else who might feel strongly about something else which is first on the list to be cut? I just didn't know if you had a list already, or if you're going to take input from folks in town as to, well, we have to cut something.
So we have gotten input from folks in town. We've had, like I said, 24 plus meetings. They've all been televised. They've all had public input opportunities.
Yes, I
and so all of those priorities will be revisited with the PMBC and with the AFRAC committee and with the Board of Selectmen once those bids come back. Those bids might come back. We may end up adding things in, which
Sure.
I would anticipate based on the reputation and the record that Gail has had with previous projects, and based on the climate right now. For instance, the fire department came in at a better number as well. So,
And what would be added in initially would be the 2 things listed on the tier 3, which were identified as things that folks want. The locker rooms, for instance, would be included. If it came in at 3.6 million and you had extra money to do something, you'd choose from that tier 3?
I can speculate, and I can tell you that would be the case, but I'm not the be-all, end-all, so that would be a decision that we made. As I mentioned, the PMBC takes us over once it gets approved and it goes out to bid.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Senator Mike?
Bill Cromus, Lake Warren Drive. I'd just like to present a few data points to this discussion. I'm kind of disappointed they didn't do the natural option for the field. There's been a lot of reports of a lot of injuries. I'm quoting specifically the women's Olympic team said that they play more on the artificial turfs and they get injured more versus the men who play more on a natural turf. I saw that on one of the major networks. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I heard reports in Westford, our neighbor, say that people have gotten infections from artificial turf, specifically bacterial infections.
Please.
The other thing is, I saw on TV, on a lot of natural broadcasts, they actually had pictures of athletes that had large rashes from playing on the artificial turfs. So those kind of raised my concern. I'm really disappointed that they kind of negged the natural thing. I think it's a safety concern for our young athletes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You got to. You have to be at a microphone to move the question. We've got maybe two people in line, so we're going to hear from them, and then we'll get to the vote. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Paul Lavella, 94 Grist Mill. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also the chairman of the Master Plan Update Steering Committee. And it's not the master plan that I'm here to speak to you about and offer the perspective, but I am here to support the proposal as it's been put out for us this evening. And I'd like to tell you why, please. Going back a few years when we did the track, we actually looked at the entire facility of doing the field and the track, you may recall, and it was decided it was maybe a little too expensive at the time. So we broke it up and looked at this would be in the future. Well, I think, folks, the future's arrived for us. So we did the track a few years back, and now it's time for this. When I first moved to Littleton with my wife 13 years ago, and just real quick, I have no children in the school, never have, and we never will, and no grandchildren either. We're moved here empty nesters. But there was something about Littleton that we just loved. And it's in this past year and a half that I finally figured it out, because we got all the objective reasons why we like Littleton, think it's a great town, many things that we can enumerate about, but there was something inside my heart, if you will, as to why. And over this past year and a half, working the master plan, I really came to realize, and it came to crystallize here, just really the last couple weeks. I grew up 44 miles due south here, a town called Smithfield, Rhode Island. And when I grew up in that town, it was roughly what we are here today in Littleton. Size, demographics, everything. And I really started putting together, and I actually looked at some numbers. And even Long Lake was about 0.9 miles long, and the little pond I grew up with was 0.9 miles long. Moderate bit of trivia. What I've come to realize is Littleton is a hometown for me personally. And people built the infrastructure in my town as I grew up the way we have here over these last 15, 16, 17 years. The high school, the new middle school that we're in now, Russell Street renovation, Shaker renovation, new police, fire station that you've already looked at this evening. And we're doing the same thing here in town. And I realized folks took care of me when I was a kid, if you will, the people in the town. That's us now here. And it's our opportunity to take care of the children. We built new fields, new football fields, new soccer fields, new baseball fields as I was growing up. And I see this as our opportunity personally to pay back, and that's why I'm here to support it. I think we owe it to our children, this opportunity, that they can have a facility like this. And as it was mentioned earlier, Chuck, when he said it's more like an outdoor community center, I certainly can see that vision also. Thanks a bunch, folks.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, center microphone. Yes, ma'am.
Laura Fickett, 36 Bulkley Road. I just wanted to say, at what point is the town going to vote yes if they do not vote tonight? I have 4 children here, ages from 3 to 15. Most of the people that use the field are children. They get injured. The fields are a mess. The bleachers, I won't even let my toddler on for fear that he may potentially die at the field. So at what point are we going to say yes if we don't say yes tonight? Are we going to wait until that toddler dies? That's my question for the community. Because I certainly don't want any kids injured or dead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is James Kennedy. I live at 50 Gilson Road. Also, I have 3 children, play all kinds of sports, love lacrosse and football and everything, you name it. And I'm really disappointed with the way the fields were all summer. And but I'm glad we're taking care of things. I think this is the best that we could get, I think. I didn't attend all the meetings, but I followed it on Facebook. And, I want to thank all those people who attended those meetings and put those long, long hours in studying, researching, trying to understand why, this is the best we could get, the most affordable for the town. And the numbers, I think, speak for themselves. We're going to get far more hours at a far lower cost used for the field. So I want to speak out favorably and hope that everyone votes yes on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am, Center Mike.
Mary Estretta, 7 Colburn Lane. I have a question as far as the finances are concerned. We're talking about, we're putting $4 million aside. If the bid comes in under the $4 million, let's go with the 360 that Chuck said, why doesn't that extra money come back to the town? Why does that money then get used to add additional things?
when the bid process goes out to the street and it comes back, we'll be able to make decisions on, do we feel like we have enough of a facility at the dollar amount that that we think we can get it at? If we think that we need to make some adjustments because the bid came in higher, we'll do it. If it ultimately comes in too high, we don't think that's going to happen, that's a pretty far-fetched based on the professionals that we're working with, then we would have to think about whether or not this project is even feasible and just pull it back. If it comes in significantly lower, we'll take another look at the priorities and see what we can get. But again, Mr. DeCoe spoke to this. Ultimately, the people who make the decision will think about what's the impact if we do one thing and don't do another. And if there's an opportunity, we don't set the money aside. It's there to use if we have a project to do it with. If we find out that we don't need to use as much, we just don't borrow as much. We don't have to give anything back. We just don't borrow as much. And then that $2.5 million pool is a little bit bigger for other priorities that we have defined as a town as we go through this process. This doesn't stop that kind of process. This is just a step along it, and it will continue to evolve as we go through many more years of budgeting and setting priorities.
So then who decides if it comes under bid? And right now, we're saying we want the first two categories, and then the third one is a wish list. Who decides whether we don't borrow the money, or we keep moving up the wish
So
list?
as Chuck talked about it, the PMBC will be in charge at that point with input from the project principals. In this case, it would probably be a combination of the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. Those are publicly held meetings. They have to be held in public. There'll be opportunity for community input. So we'll get a gauge on what people are thinking their priorities are before we make any final decisions regarding that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, with the, yeah, okay, last one, yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, Joe Catala, Robinson Road. I wanted to first of all thank everyone on the boards for the effort that you put in to this project. It's gone on for a number of years. I was a selectman once. We have great community spirit here. We pull together. The kids deserve this facility. It's not only for the kids, it's a great community night to go out to a football field, to go to a cheerleading competition. It's wonderful community spirit. I move the vote.
All right, there's no one left at the microphone. We're going to move to the vote, and we will do this, Mr. Sanders' comments notwithstanding. I committed that this would be a ballot and checklist vote some time ago, and despite the time that takes, that's the way we're going to do it tonight. So you'll be called up by section again, and remember, the yes vote is for the project, and a no is no. Tear it in half and put the correct one in the box. Just before anyone moves, Madam Clerk would like to address town meeting.
So, just to make it clear with everyone, you're going to be called up by sections. Please do not come up until your section is called. We're going to call one section, they're going to go up and vote. When they are all done, we're going to call the next section, so that it's done orderly, so that there's not big lines, so that it's not all kinds of people cutting in and everybody's getting all upset. We're going to call one section at a time. So wait till your section is called. Please stay in your seats. It's going to be done nice and orderly this time, okay?
Okay.
Well, we want to let this group over here on the right, our seniors and people that have...
I'm sorry, could you let the clerk speak, please?
This first group over here, our seniors, we're going to allow them to go, let them have their first vote, and then we'll go over here to you, all right, folks? All right.
Okay, and we'll conduct the voting in the same manner. As soon as the balloting is completed, we're going to move on with the warrant. It's my intention to finish tonight. I don't know how many of you will be with me on that, but when we announce the vote totals, we'll give people who want to leave an opportunity to leave. We ask that you do so quietly and in an orderly fashion. Take your conversation into the parking lots or wherever else you might be going tonight. Thank you.